Okay, now I'm going to go into ongoing enrichment automation. This step does not have to come after a cleanup, although it almost always will, because it makes sense to clean up what you have before you keep it clean. And so what we're doing over here, this is, I would say, the most different from the prior steps. We are, if this is the only thing a customer is going to be, buying, we're going to still do all the property mapping, ICP scoping, building the enrichments, calibrating them, doing the whole thing. But one extra step that's going to happen here is we're going to be dealing a lot more with, it's all about ongoing enrichment. So we have to define re-enrichment frequencies, and it can get very complicated when you start thinking about how often do we want to enrich contacts versus contacts versus companies. How do we want to treat customers versus opportunities versus prospects? Like how often do we want to enrich those records? And then you can also, for each one of these segments, you can go down to the property level and you can say, how often do I want to re-enrich this property? So for example, the company name probably will never be re-enriched, but an email might want to be validated every 3 months to make sure it's still working. So you can get very granular. And then you also have to define overwrite rules as well. I mentioned, I think in the first video about the HubSpot cleanup, overwriting existing data. Very simple example I usually give. You have a cell phone number in your HubSpot already. Do you want to overwrite it or not? So a few factors you could ask, a few factors you could use to decide whether or not you want to overwrite this phone number. How long ago was it last enriched? And who or what last enriched this number? And I guess that would probably be it. How long ago and who or what last enriched the phone number? Oh, the third thing might be, is it a customer or a prospect? So if a salesperson last enriched the phone number and it was a customer and it was within 6 months, you probably would not want to overwrite that because it's very likely that it was a real phone number that was given to the salesperson directly by the customer. Versus if it was 5 years ago, maybe you would want to overwrite that. Another easy example to overwrite would be if it was a ZoomInfo phone number. That's very, very likely to be wrong. So you would probably want to overwrite that with an updated phone number. And a third example could be product data from pendo.io. Someone signs up for your app. You get their phone number through Pendo, which is like a product, a software for the in-app product world. That data flows into HubSpot. It's likely correct because it came from a product user through Pendo. So in our dashboard, we have a thing called protected sources where we can put in HubSpot user IDs of salespeople, for example, that if the last enrichment source was from that user ID, don't overwrite. Or don't overwrite if it was a customer and that user ID that last enriched the record. Or don't overwrite if it was a customer and a specific user ID that last enriched that record property. And it was over, let's say 12 months ago, then you would overwrite, or you wouldn't if it was under 12 months. It can get very complicated. These are all things we're doing in the automated enrichment. And once we have this set up, we just have these ongoing workflows that fire and keep the system clean. And I probably should have started with this, but the whole point of this is if you only do a one-time enrichment and you don't do anything else, the data is going to decay. Yeah, sure, company name won't change. The website probably won't change. But what will change is the company headcount and emails of the people working there. In many industries, unless you're in the government working, selling to governments, employees change all the time, back and forth, back and forth. So tracking who works where, a lot of the contacts in your CRM are probably inaccurate in terms of where they work. Their job titles, that they've been promoted, you don't know that information. They've changed departments. All these things you can track with Clay and keep your CRM up to date. So the first two modules I spoke about were, let's take what we already have and let's fix it. This module, ongoing enrichment, is let's keep what we have in good shape so it doesn't decay. And then the final thing to consider is new records entering your system. We're focusing specifically on inbound lead enrichment, but this could also apply to list imports and whatnot. Oftentimes new records entering the HubSpot are incomplete or spammy, duplicates, and that causes problems too. So I'm going to cover that in the fourth and final video in the series.